I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I've been married to my wife Lisa for almost 7 years now. We had what I thought was a solid relationship. We met in college, fell in love, and built a life together in a cozy little house in the suburbs. But over time, things started to change, and I began to notice how often Lisa compared me to her ex-boyfriend, Mike, who she dated before we met. She would bring him up in the most casual ways, sometimes even during arguments. Well, Mike would have done this, or remember when Mike took me to that fancy restaurant. It was always a jab, and I could feel it wearing on me. Initially, I brushed it off. I figured she was just reminiscing about a past relationship, something people do from time to time. But when her tone started to shift, it felt like more than nostalgia. It felt like a critique on my every move. I started to question if I was good enough for her, or if I was just a placeholder until she found someone she actually wanted. That nagging feeling grew, and I started noticing other changes in her behavior. She was coming home later from work, her phone seemed to be glued to her hand, and she had become more secretive about her plans. One night, I decided to confront her about it. I asked if everything was all right if there was someone else. She laughed it off, saying I was being paranoid. But then she started to get defensive. "You're not like Mike," she snapped at me one evening when I mentioned how I had a coworker who seemed to be friendly with her lately. I let it go that night, trying to convince myself everything was fine, but deep down, the doubts ate away at me. Then came the day everything changed. I had just gotten off work early and thought I'd surprise her with dinner. As I walked through the front door, I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway, which was odd for a Thursday evening. I shrugged it off, assuming she probably was still at the office. I headed to the kitchen to start prepping, and that's when I noticed it. Her phone was lying on the dining table, flashing with a message. Notification. The screen lit up and I saw a name, Mark. I had never heard that name before, and my gut twisted. Curiosity got the better of me, and before I knew it, I was looking through her messages. What I found shattered my world. There were flirty texts, plans for get-togethers, and even an explicit exchange that made my heart race for all the wrong reasons. I felt like I was going to be sick. It was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me, and with someone I didn't even know. I don't remember much of what happened next. I just stood there, staring at the phone, the weight of betrayal settling into my bones. The realization that everything I thought I knew about our marriage was a lie crashed down on me. Lisa had been betraying my trust while I was busy working to provide for us. I could feel anger building inside me. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there. But I also felt this crushing sadness. How could she do this to me? I waited for her to come home, my heart racing as I plotted out how I would confront her. Would I be calm? Would I explode? I had no idea, but I knew one thing: I needed answers, and I needed her to feel the weight of what she had done. When Lisa finally came home, the door creaked open, and I could hear her cheerful voice as she entered the living room. My heart sank deeper as I realized she had no clue what I had just uncovered. I had the hard evidence right in front of me. I was about to confront the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, and I had no idea what was going to happen next. I sat there on the couch, gripping the edge of the seat, my mind racing. I could hear Lisa humming a tune in the kitchen as she started to take off her coat. Everything about that moment felt surreal, like I was watching a movie unfold instead of living out my grim reality. I could picture the life we had built together, all the moments that felt genuine, now tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. The sound of her footsteps grew closer, and I felt my heart pound in my chest. When she finally entered the living room, she smiled at me, completely unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. "Hey babe, you're home early," she said, her voice sweet and light. She walked toward me, her expression shifting to one of confusion as she noticed the tension in my face. "Yeah, I am," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, and I watched as her defenses went up. "Talk about what?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I found your phone. I saw your messages with Mark." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged with emotion. For a moment she froze, the color draining from her face. "What, Jake, you can't just go through my phone?" she protested, her voice rising. Can't I? You've been lying to me, Lisa. You've been cheating on me. I snapped, the anger spilling out of me like a broken dam. What do you have to say for yourself? She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out at first. I watched as she scrambled for excuses, her mind racing to come up with something that could justify her actions. It's not what it looks like, you have to believe me, she finally said, her tone desperate. Then what is it, Lisa? What am I looking at? Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. I shot back, holding up her phone as evidence. A part of me wanted to throw it against the wall to shatter the device that had been the medium of her betrayal, but instead I just held it tightly in my grip. I was just being friendly with him, you have to understand. She insisted, her voice rising in pitch, almost pleading. Friendly? Flirting with another man is friendly? I asked, incredulous. Do you think I'm some kind of idiot? She opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water as I pressed her. You've been bringing him up in conversations like he's some kind of benchmark for our marriage. You said I wasn't enough. Well, guess what? You've proven that you're not enough for me either. Her eyes widened in shock, and for the first time I saw a flicker of vulnerability. Jake, please, I didn't mean it like that. I was just remembering the past. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything. So what? You were just getting a little thrill on the side. Do you think I'm okay with that? The anger surged through me like wildfire. I felt betrayed and belittled, like everything we had built was crumbling before my eyes. I love you, Jake, she shouted suddenly, her voice breaking. I do, can't you see? It was just a mistake, a stupid mistake. A mistake? You didn't just trip and fall into bed with him, Lisa. You made a choice. You made multiple choices. The tears began to stink my eyes. I had never seen her this flustered, this panicked. A part of me wanted to comfort her, but I knew I couldn't. As the confrontation unraveled, each of her excuses felt like a dagger to my heart. Lisa claimed it was just emotional, that she was unhappy, that I wasn't paying enough attention to her. It felt like she was trying to manipulate me into believing that I was at fault for her infidelity. My mind raced as I realized that she had been playing the victim while cheating on me. I was devastated, and the anger morphed into a deep sadness. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her excuse this away or manipulate my feelings. I had to take a stand for myself. I was done being compared to her past relationships, done being the one who was never enough. I can't do this anymore, Lisa. I can't be in a marriage where I'm constantly second best, I said, my voice trembling but firm. Her face twisted in disbelief, and for the first time I saw the genuine fear in her eyes. I realized how serious this moment was. I was standing on the precipice of my future, faced with the reality of what I needed to do. This was no longer about saving our marriage. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I needed to figure out how to move forward, no matter how hard it would be. As I stood there, the weight of my words hanging in the air, I could see the panic in Lisa's eyes start to morph into desperation. She was scrambling, trying to piece together an argument that would somehow convince me to stay, but I was done listening to excuses. You're being dramatic, Jake. We can work through this, she pleaded, her voice rising with urgency. Work through it? You think that's just going to magically fix everything? I shot back, feeling the anger boil in my chest again. You've betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, Lisa. There's no way to just work through this. She stepped closer, her tone softening in an attempt to reach me. Please don't say this. I love you. This was just a moment of weakness. I was feeling lost, but I want us to fix this. We can go to counseling, we can do whatever it takes. Counseling? I had a bitter laugh at that. You think I want to sit in some therapist's office and talk about how you decided to cheat on me? You think I want to work through the guilt you feel for sleeping with someone else? You think a few sessions are going to erase the pain you've caused? The look on her face told me she was starting to realize the gravity of our situation. She was losing me, and she didn't know how to respond. I could see her mind racing, her emotions shifting from guilt to anger as she tried to regain control. You're being unreasonable, she snapped, her voice laced with frustration. You're throwing away our entire marriage over one mistake. One mistake, I echoed incredulously. You've made a choice to betray me, to lie, to conceal your actions. This isn't just a mistake, this is a clear reflection of your character. I didn't plan for it to happen, it just happened. You don't understand what it was like for me. she said, her voice cracking, but I could hear the self-centeredness behind her words. It was infuriating. I can't believe you're still trying to manipulate the narrative, I replied, my heart racing. I felt like I was in a courtroom, the evidence stacked against her, yet she was still trying to plead her case. You're making excuses for your behavior instead of taking responsibility for the pain you've caused me. Her face fell as she realized I was no longer the attentive husband she could sway with casual charm. I was standing firm, ready to take my life back. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, shaking my head. You're not the woman I married. The woman I married would never do this. The silence between us grew heavy. I could hear the clock ticking in the background, each second echoing the finality of our conversation. The reality of what was happening began to settle in, along with a strange mixture of sadness, relief, and anger. I felt like a stranger in my own home, facing a person I had once loved and trusted wholly. I can't stay in this house, I finally said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I need time away from you to think. This is too much right now. Jake, please don't go. She reached out, grasping my arm. I'll do better, I promise. Just give me a chance to prove it. I pulled away, my chest heaving with the emotions I was forced to confront. You had your chance, Lisa. You threw it away. As I turned to leave the living room, I felt a heaviness settle over me. But I also felt a sense of freedom, an odd strength emerging from the wreckage of my heart. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, not looking back. The urge to turn around and comfort her was strong, but I fought it. I had to be strong for myself. I stepped out of the house and into the cool evening air, the weight of betrayal still heavy on my shoulders, yet somehow liberating. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to process everything that had just happened. I felt like my entire world had been flipped upside down, and I had no idea where to go from here. I didn't want to call friends or family just yet. I needed to sort through my emotions alone first. But as I drove, I could feel the anger mixing with a profound sense of loss. My thoughts drifted to memories of happier times, our wedding day, vacations, quiet nights spent together. It felt surreal to think about how quickly everything had unraveled. I had once believed in our future, but now I was questioning everything. Eventually, I found myself at a bar, a dimly lit place with a few locals scattered around. I stepped inside, ordering a drink and taking a seat at the far end of the bar. I needed to think, to breathe, to figure out what my next steps were going to be. The bartender offered a sympathetic smile as I sipped my drink, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of isolation. At that moment, I realized I hadn't just lost my wife. I had lost the life we had built together. But amidst that loss, I also felt the stirring of a determination to reclaim my own happiness. I had to figure out how to move forward, how to take back control of my life, and how to ensure that I would never find myself in such a vulnerable position again. As I sat there, contemplating the chaos that had become my life, one thing became painfully clear. I was done playing second best. I needed a plan. I needed to rise from the ashes of this betrayal and make choices that would shape my future alone if necessary. The night dragged on as I nursed my drink, staring into the amber liquid as if it held the answers I was desperately seeking. My mind raced with thoughts of Lisa, the betrayal gnawing at me like a persistent ache. I felt like I was stuck in a loop, reliving the same moments over and over again. I couldn't understand how she could do this to me, how someone I loved so deeply could inflict such pain. After a while, I decided to call my best friend, Sam. We known each other since high school, and he had always been there through thick and thin. Maybe talking to him would help clear my head a bit. I stepped outside the bar, the cool night air hitting my face as I dialed his number. "Hey man, what's up?" Sam picked up, his voice cheerful. "Hey, can we talk?" I replied, unable to mask the heaviness in my tone. "Sure, what's going on?" I just found out that Lisa is cheating on me," I said, my voice cracking slightly. There was a brief silence on the other end before Sam responded. "Oh, Jake, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "Not really. I'm at a bar right now, just trying to process everything." "Want me to come over?" Sam offered. "Yeah, that would be great," I said, feeling a little relief that I wouldn't have to face this alone. "Just give me a few minutes." We hung up and I took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside me. I knew I couldn't go back home tonight, not after everything that had happened. I didn't want to see Lisa's face, filled with guilt and denial. I needed space to think, to figure out what I wanted. When Sam arrived, he walked in with his usual casual demeanor, but the moment his eyes landed on me, I could see the concern etched on his face. "Jake, man, you look rough," he said, pulling me into a brief hug. "Thanks, I guess," I replied, forcing a smile. "You want a drink?" "Sure, but only if you order something stronger," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. We settled into a booth at the back, and as I recounted the events of the evening, the discovery of Lisa's betrayal, our confrontation, and my decision to leave, I could see the rage building in Sam's eyes. "I can't believe she'd do that to you. What a jerk!" he exclaimed, shaking his head. "I really thought we were happy," I said, frustration spilling out with my words. "I thought I was doing everything right, but apparently it wasn't enough." "It's not your fault, man. You didn't make her cheat. She made that choice," Sam insisted, his voice firm. "You deserve better than this." "I know," I sighed, running a hand through my hair, "but it hurts. I can't help but feel like I failed somehow." "Failure? No way. You didn't fail at anything. You trusted her." "That's not a failure, that's just being human," he said, leaning forward, earnest. "Listen, you've got to focus on what you want to do next. Have you thought about what that looks like?" I took a sip of my drink, contemplating his words. "Honestly, I'm still processing everything. Part of me wants to confront her again, to make her understand just how much she's hurt me. But another part of me knows that we're probably better off apart." "Sounds like a solid plan." "You don't need to be with someone who doesn't appreciate you or your love," Sam replied. "But you need to be clear about what you want. Do you want to try to salvage the marriage, or is it time to cut your losses?" I took a deep breath, trying to wrap my head around that question. "I don't know. Part of me wants to fight for what we had, but the other part is screaming at me to run. I can't live in a marriage where I'm constantly compared to someone else. I deserve better." "Then maybe it's time to focus on yourself for a bit," Sam suggested. "Rediscover who you are outside of this relationship. You've been so focused on Lisa and what she needs, it's time to put yourself first." He was right. I had spent so much time trying to be the perfect husband, trying to meet her expectations, that I had lost sight of myself. I needed to reclaim my identity, my happiness, and my future. "I think I need to take a break from everything," I admitted. "I need to figure out what I really want." "Good idea. Maybe plan a trip, get away for a bit. Let your mind breathe." "You don't have to make any rush decisions right now," Sam encouraged. "And when you're ready, you can decide how to confront her again, but on your terms." As the night wore on, we talked more about my feelings and the next steps I could take. Sam reminded me that my worth wasn't tied to Lisa's actions and that I had the power to shape my own life. It felt good to have that support, someone who truly understood what I was going through. By the time we finished our drinks, I felt a little lighter, a little more empowered. I was still hurt, still processing the betrayal, but I could see a glimmer of hope amid the chaos. I was determined to reclaim my life, to focus on my happiness, and to make choices that would lead me toward a brighter future, one where I wouldn't be compared to her past or made to feel less than I was. As we left the bar, I could finally see a path forward, and it felt like the first step toward healing. I was ready to take control of my life again, no matter how challenging the road ahead might be. The next few days felt surreal as I tried to navigate this new chapter of my life. I had resolved to take time for myself, but the reality of Lisa's betrayal loomed over me like a dark cloud. I was still living in the same house, going through the motions of daily life, but it felt like I was in a dream, a nightmare, really, where everything was just slightly off. I focused on my work, throwing myself into projects and tasks to distract myself from the pain. Evenings were the hardest. I'd find myself sitting alone in the living room, surrounded by memories of happier times, and the weight of loneliness would crash down on me. I needed to make a plan to confront Lisa again, but I was still wrestling with what I really wanted from that conversation. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I stumbled upon a photo from our wedding. I couldn't help but smile at the happiness captured in that moment, but it quickly turned into a wave of sadness. I had promised to love her for better or worse, Yet here we were, facing the worst. I felt a mix of anger and longing, but I was determined not to let those emotions control me anymore. That's when I decided it was time to face Lisa again. I texted her, asking if we could talk. She replied almost instantly, expressing her eagerness to meet and her apologies for everything that had happened. I was surprised at how quickly she agreed to meet, but I figured she was just as desperate as I was to resolve the tension hanging between us. We agreed to meet at a cafe that was halfway between our workplaces. As I approached the cafe, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had rehearsed several different conversations in my head, but I knew that once we sat down, the truth would come pouring out. When I saw her sitting at a corner table, her head down, I felt a rush of emotions claw at me, pain, anger, and a flicker of the love I once felt. She looked up as I approached, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and guilt. "Jake," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Hey, Lisa," I replied, taking a seat across from her. For a moment, silence hung heavily between us as we both gathered our thoughts. I could see the weight of what had happened reflected in her eyes, and it was almost painful to witness. "I'm really glad you agreed to meet," she said, biting her lip. "I've had some time to think about everything, and I want to apologize again for what I did. I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry." "Apologies don't change the fact that you cheated on me," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You made a choice, Lisa, and you need to understand how deeply that has affected me." "I know," she replied, her eyes glistening with tears. "But I want to be honest with you about why it happened. It wasn't just about Mark, it was about me feeling lost, about how I felt like you weren't there for me." "Is that really the excuse you want to use?" I shot back. "You felt lost, so you decided to sleep with another man. That's not a reason, that's an excuse. You could have come to me, you could have talked to me, but instead you chose betrayal." I could see her flinch at my words, but I was done sugarcoating things. I needed her to feel the weight of her actions. "You compared me to Mike, you compared me to Mark. What does that say about how you viewed our relationship?" I continued. "Do I mean so little to you?" Her expression shifted, and I could tell she was grappling with the reality of what I was saying. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, needing that physical space to reinforce my emotional boundaries. "I can't do this right now, Lisa. We need to be honest with each other. I've lost trust in you, and I don't know if I can ever get it back. I want to rebuild that trust. I want to work on this. I love you, Jake," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "I know I messed up, but I want to fix it." "Love isn't enough anymore," I replied, my heart aching at the truth of my words. "You've shattered my trust, and I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I need to think about what I truly want, and right now, I don't think it's you." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she tried to process my words. "Please don't say that. I'll do better. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes." "Counseling? You think sitting in a room with a therapist is going to erase the hurt?" I said, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I need more than empty promises, Lisa. I need actions. I need space to heal." The conversation continued, but it felt like we were going in circles. Every time Lisa offered an excuse, I countered it with my reality. I was done being the one who had to pick up the pieces. As I spoke, I realized that I was no longer pleading for her to change. I was advocating for my own needs and desires. It was a turning point, a moment of clarity amid the chaos. After an hour of back and forth, I made my decision. "I think it's best if we take some time apart," I stated firmly. "I need to focus on myself and figure out what I want without the constant reminders of your betrayal." Her face fell, and I could feel the weight of her disappointment in the air. "But we can work this out. I know we can," she cried, but I shook my head. "I need to do this for me, Lisa. I can't keep living in this limbo. I need to take control of my life again, and right now that means stepping away from this relationship." With that, I stood up, leaving behind the echoes of our conversation and the remnants of what we once had. I walked out of the cafe, feeling a mix of sadness and empowerment. I was taking a significant step toward healing, toward finding myself again. The road ahead would be long, but I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. After that day at the cafe, the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. I moved out of our shared home and into a small apartment not too far from my old place. It was a fresh start, or at least I hoped it would be. The first few nights were the hardest. I would lie in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling as memories of Lisa flooded my mind. I missed the companionship, the laughter, even the mundane moments we shared. But deep down, I knew I had made the right choice. I began to focus on myself, rediscovering parts of my life that had been overshadowed by the relationship. I started going to the gym again, something I had neglected while trying to maintain our marriage. I found solace in long runs, pushing my body to release the pent-up emotions I had been holding onto for so long. I also reconnected with friends like Sam, who had supported me through this tempest. Their encouragement reminded me of who I was before Lisa and how much I had lost sight of myself in the marriage. As time went on, I started seeing a therapist. Talking to someone who could provide an objective perspective helped me process the emotional roller coaster of the past. I learned about boundaries, self-worth, and the importance of valuing myself, lessons I had neglected while trying to be a good husband. I began to understand that I deserved a healthy relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and love, not one tainted by lies and betrayal. One afternoon, as I was sitting in my new apartment, I received a text from Lisa. It had been months since we had any contact. My heart raced as I read her message. "Can we talk? I've been doing a lot of thinking." Part of me felt a rush of anxiety at the thought of facing her again, but another part of me was curious. I agreed to meet her at the same cafe where we had last spoken. This time I felt stronger, more resolved in my decision to prioritize my well-being. When I arrived, Lisa was already there, sitting at our old table. She looked different, more vulnerable, more introspective. We exchanged awkward pleasantries before she spoke. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "I wanted to apologize again for everything and to tell you that I've been working on myself too." I nodded, noticing the sincerity in her eyes. "What does that mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I've been going to therapy," she said. "I've realized that I was projecting my insecurities onto you. I didn't handle my feelings well, and I took you for granted. I know that doesn't excuse my actions, but I want you to know I'm taking steps to improve myself." I listened intently, surprised at how calm I felt. Maybe it was the closure I had been seeking, or perhaps it was the realization that I had moved on. "I appreciate you saying that, Lisa," I replied, "but I need you to understand that what you did changed everything for me. I can't go back to how things were." "I understand," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "I've accepted that you need to move on. I just wanted to express my regret and to apologize for how I treated you." "Thank you," I said, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was more about acknowledging the past and the lessons learned. "I'm happy to hear you're working on yourself. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." We talked for a little while longer, sharing updates about our lives. It was clear that we had both changed, and while there was still some sadness in the air, it felt lighter than before. I realized that I no longer felt the weight of anger or betrayal. Instead, I felt a sense of closure, the kind that allows you to genuinely wish former loved ones well. As we wrapped up our conversation and said our goodbyes, I walked out of the cafe feeling a mixture of emotions. I was proud of how far I had come, of the strength I had found within myself. I had transformed my pain into something constructive, and now I could look forward to whatever life had in store for me. In the months that followed, I continued to grow and heal. I took risks I had never considered before, traveling to new places, trying out new hobbies, and even dating again. Each experience taught me more about myself and what I wanted in a partner. I realized that love should never feel like a competition. It should be a partnership built on trust and respect. Looking back, I still felt the sting of betrayal, but I also felt grateful for the lessons learned. I knew that every experience, no matter how painful, had shaped me into a stronger person. I had emerged from the ashes, not just surviving but thriving, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life. I often thought about the future and what it might hold. I was no longer the man defined by someone else's choices. I was Jake, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged wiser and more resilient. And with that realization, I knew that I would never allow anyone to compare me to another person again. I was enough, just as I was.